Hello, America, Connecticut, and Weathersfield. Any kids, I need you to ask your parents for permission, but it's a contest, and some of the parents have been saying fake things into databases, and with the kids, and each age of fact cheating nature, and they've been connecting this to illusions they've been stacking in databases on all the campuses, sickly distinctly. Now there are manifest demonstrations of this where and how everyone, for example, blamed on other things, others, or selves, the real causes of those entrenched, crazy, sick laws and criminally foreign influenced uses remotely of the branches of government, with where and how slavery actually had been entrenched in the world and in North America and South America before our founders were even born. This method had been sustained against the colonizers, against the Native Americans, sustained it further, increasingly effectively, unchallenged, undiscerned, for what you was even grouped, fighting with each other, and how their alliances, both criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments, of positive as volume. One identity of volume is coming to, from, as, with, and for each thing as a scientific value, the identity of the hyper-simultaneous, that which is actually hyper-simultaneously recorded, and as it is actually simultaneously recorded. Now, we need, quote, experts, unquote, to be able to delineate who's right or wrong about what's actually simultaneously recorded and the value of it actually, as it actually is. Because sequence shifts and roles with juxtaposed distinct natures of organized crime, for example, and of other natures of crime, and using the definition of it that they have been incapable of using because they've been in collusion. Uses of the debate, the fences of what's debate. They're forcing a quality of fact cheaping nature. The Republicans and the Democrats, they call it, oh, because the bases are fighting like that. The bases are fighting like that because everyone came through campuses. Everyone came through a republic and its campuses that are hyper additional to themselves, where and how they are revealed, actually having been revealed, functional. Exactly the same way computers work. All exceptions, exception nature, are in demonstration of the same thing. Boxing. So they had crazy laws of slavery against every single person. Sickly distinctly. Our founders had to counter extort the other founders in themselves. And they're the lie about what actually brought them together. And the phenomenon of telling us that the Constitution, we should get it unabridged. That means of a quality of fact cheaping nature. That it is evidence. That and how it has been offensively with people pretending passions and emotions freed. They have our founders blamed multi-front and counters to it in collusion for slavery in our faces. All exceptions in exception nature that appear to be in demonstration of other are in demonstration of the same thing, while simultaneously being in demonstration of how nature's nature and the value of that as the definition of nature, greater than and more finite than, while as that extent we have to discern. Keeping possible means to discern things we don't know, but with what we do know. So the President Biden was, I just saw on CNN, he was saying with passions and emotions that that we can't say. He's, where they're right and wrong, the truths are being used for lies. And when they're not being used for lies, other sides using it for lies. All that is used remotely. There are methods manifest now that would not have been and would not be. We could discern them because we can. We have the free speech. So the police have been fabricating audio and video transcripts as a whole bunch of distinct natures and methods of wire crimes. And a way worse, because uses of all identity ground locations. Every name at AT&T. Every name at SNET. Every name at these communiques. Nothing personal against you guys. This is former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, his defendant capacity, is involved with a chain of events and instances with people offensively that have been planting fact-keeping nature-oriented evidence crimes. Where and how, for example, the time treatments by police, by politicians, and by the judicial branch, individually grouped in together. They have methods individually, as the individuals distinctly, as individual departments distinctly, as other police forms with them, through individuals, even a former director of the FBI in his defending capacities, leading up to it, a part of the case in 2006, and in cases before that, with his roles with various natures of federal criminals and their family members that were recorded as actually reported having been involved with worse before they were caught in sins. Even if they are police forms undercover, they have timed roles with planting evidences, including fact-keeping nature-oriented, online, through the news media, on off campuses, little tricks to keep things that go before interbranch locations that they've been building upon. Not just stacking fake things there at interbranch locations, but stacking fake things on off campuses, stacking fake things on off everybody's home. And more, this breaching method knew that it would make illusions and effectively used, only allowed to have been known, manifest, so spoken, heard, known. Criminal ceaseless natures of positive and negative treatments, that the quote Sense and Sensibilities, use the phrase reportedly by Jane Austen. I keep forgetting to look up about Jane Austen. We must use the authors of the past and stuff. And things grounded relative to history, aware of phrases like criminal insidiousness, aware of where and how, criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments, and names per uses of them, and of negative treatments, and of names per uses of them. And their motivations, too, needed by the breaching method with other motivations. That nature it knew would be demonstrating. And this is where and how, when people have logic that says, oh, well, I didn't cause that. For example, where and how so many people are forsaken across the globe, suits and ties, counters to it, when they speak, either they're attached to fake words, forced to entertain, A, therefore B, and no one allowed to show how they're exploiting exception nature, how it is actually manifest. Because one identity of hyper-simultaneous is one identity of volume. Its identity of a relationship to itself, and the only increasing value of that, relative to where and how there are apparent exceptions and temporary exceptions and demonstrate, for example, when how it is. The order of the finite, beyond our control, but in our control one way. That as that which is and stays, too finite for us to grapple with and or for us to cultivate, or control, but one way. Where and how, for example, ourselves, our complete identities, where all the parts of ourselves have a semi-nature relationship to the complete self. The complete self has a semi-nature relationship to the complete possession of space/existence, distinctly, non-distinctly, and hyper-simultaneously itself, where it is making more identity of itself as an identity of forever nature is one of the things it is constantly. Where and how it is temporarily other is in demonstration of the same thing. More forever nature is being made. Now, this is also, there is evidence it is manifest in the law this way. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a police force, I'm not a criminal, but lawyers have been multi-front with the branch of the government. Now, so to understand this, and to understand Little Rap Guy and Friends, why they are counter-obfuscated. Some of the episodes I do a little bit good, just to show that I could, because there are people, and this is an identity theft, fraud, slander method that has, quote, experts, unquote, of both political parties, specifically to keep them entertaining. For example, either defund the police, or if you say something bad about the police have been changing people's words as roles with where and how they are victims from, if they, no matter what, there are means to see. I'm not even a police. I never tried to go through police academies or anything like that. But I caught them intercampuses of other ages and natures with a method. For example, there were kids that pretended to know me. They made fake exceptions pretending to know me. This is what happens where we have them, the victims / hyper victims being and having been employed. Their reactions as predators / hyper predators against strangers, as that which was forced by the breaching method, that forced nature itself to demonstrate the breaching method, but now through other identity grounds, voicing for it, voicing for themselves as our identity of value / value progression as it is actually manifest and having been. Where and how actively now people are calling things politics that are collusion / S, with effectively propagated, with effectively engineered, criminally re-engineered republic for which we stand, and its campuses systems, and the exceptions and exception nature to that. The ancients revealed and valued increasingly how and why there are other ancient languages that have an identity of relationship to themselves, that with the letters of their languages have an identity of relationship to themselves, individually, grouped, and together, that is now tactical ulterior from how they were revealed by the ancients, more probably and practically and demonstrably. But to demonstrate it requires the use, for example, of where and how. The hyper-simultaneous is one of the things it is. For example, a group is a simultaneous nature, is also being an individual nature, and is being the species body of volume at the same time. See, the species individual body is an individual of individuals. All exceptions in exception nature are in demonstration of the same thing. /S. For example, what really causes evolution's fruits and gifts and means out of nowhere as a science, it does not leave out the smallest finite detail, let alone a whole bunch of group details regarding how, when, and why how the FBI had and has worse than criminal incompetence with regards to where and how. Phrases like criminal insidiousness, phrases like criminally foreign influence are being and have been used. And pretending other is worse than just screening what really caused slavery, how it caused it, what means it used to lock all to rolls with it, because they have not been relented. And where and how. Someone knows about computers, they want to be an expert and pretend they speak with, especially with passions and emotions, and on platforms tied to such serious things. In other words, I forgot the point. For January 6th, too, leading up to January 6th, there's a guy who just looks just like James Comey, probably is him, because there are family members and intimate ties to Hartford courts and to New Britain Superior Court involved with the deposition of having asked to host the deposition of Robert Luskin, where in his defendant capacity, the former director of the FBI, former standing chairperson on the Racketeering Influence and Corrupt Organizations Act. For example, so he has insights into the roles he has with predicate acts and predicate acts methods on off Trinity College, on off Central Connecticut State University, that were also timed roles of predicate acts on off children's campuses, and with a principal child defender. See, there are still principal child defenders because there are uses of roles with juxtaposed distinct natures and methods of abuses of each age of fact-cheating nature that are, quote, crimes, unquote, way worse than the ones that people are putting people in prison for, also fabricating things to do so because they have to hide those crimes. They have to hide what is actually recorded uses of immunities from prosecutions, for example, that the branches of government's members have individually grouped and together, increasingly their family members, their neighbors, the all private tied to the interbranch, therefore increasingly tied to all locations, which were already used by a method that is fact-cheating nature oriented. It wasn't his uses of collusions with illusions relevant to where our quality is fact-cheating nature. And our founders' identity thefts, frauds are recorded. Now, the means to discern it is, for example, how they talk about research and got away with pretending they see and don't see evidences. These are readings of statutes outside of interbranch locations, outside of interbranch interactions, including at people's homes increasingly. All locations distinctly had been tactically denatured before our founding parents were even born, and that had been sustained against the Native Americans because it already had been sustained against the people of Europe, the people of what is now Russia, Ukraine, America. Our suburbs were tactically denatured before our founders were even born. Everyone was sickly, distinctly prevented the quality of fact-cheating nature and memory /IES memories that came from ancients and sciences and revelations that were brought to manifest before the sciences became criminally foreign influenced. therefore standing as criminal insidiousness nature relative to the identity of hypersimultaneous, its identity of relationship to itself, and the value of that. It is more probable and practical and demonstrable to discern, English and other ancient languages and the sciences. Really, how they came about was other than was told. Because, and for example, evidence is that and how they didn't account for how the database relationships were criminally foreign influenced to exploit that other identity, the ground locations, as in through other identities, hyper additionally to its own. It employed everyone incapable of defending themselves, their positive treatments, negative treatments, identity treatments simultaneously, where and how we are actually syntactically manifest, and of affording anyone to have freedom, and in other words, of speech, to have just to begin with short words of the nature and correct. So offensively, people need to pretend that people are saying bad things about the police and we're making allegations because the interbranch has been fabricating and replacing what's actually recorded at interbranch locations and at crime scenes. And we have to discern how this is because of how the hypercrime scene is effectively being and having been used. So there are generations of Mayor Gold's family. I don't know them. I don't know him. He's one of the ones involved with people on the child sex offender registry, involved with the branches of government individually grouped and together with crime methods, with child abusers through time that are involved with wire crimes, all private tied to them, including doctors. There are doctors recorded crimes with their patients and criminals. There are proofs that it is mixed with undercover. They mix, like when they force people in for mental evaluations. Those locations and their family members having roles with their, the quote, right to lie, unquote, where and how it has been employed by a breaching method, criminally foreign influence, simultaneously, tactically / hyper-tactically, delusions wrought. So I'm not a doctor, I'm not a police form, I'm not a criminal, but I'm going to help you guys because I could delineate their delusions from their criminally foreign influence, fact-treatment nature. But you have to get them from the name switching because interbranch locations have been switching names, those who are personally tied with foreign and domestic medical families, also on off corners of streets, and per actual uses of corners of buildings, including schools, and per uses of it at all locations, per the off locations part, and on which requires being allowed to speak about and demonstrate the on campuses parts criminally involved too. So the FBI and prosecutors and prosecutions and their family members, Tim O'Brien, I have nothing, tried to pretend to know me, try to make exceptions to pretend to know me. This is where they lie about the value of the nature of and the actual nature of relationships between complete strangers and the people around everyone. They put everyone and the ones around them to fake words, including the news media multi-front at locations with the interbranch, fabricating audio and video, and with the private tied to them. So these are a whole bunch of people tied to Joshua Julian, for example, involved with fact-keeping nature or oriented various natures of federal criminals and uses of Facebook, where and how they were planting sequence shifts. And they use collusions with interbranch and a whole bunch of other countries. There are something to do with the and it's nothing personal against those other countries. That's how they're hiding, pretend they have integrity and Americans, they spoke for freedom, that were used remotely as when they pretend things are politics against each other. Any exception they try to make, they get hurt right through their own supporters, right, and others at the same time. Any leader, no matter how powerful they get, this breaching method realized it could make them only, they would be over all locations, areas, and states as fact-cheap in nature, as we are actually manifest. All kinds of criminal, reliant upon as styles of all kinds of criminal and seditious natures of positive treatments and negative treatments. For example, when they say, it is true, didn't Democrats have defund the police, which is the same as defund the FBI? No. And the FBI failed to speak about criminal insidiousness and uses of the functions by the singular breaching method function that had employed witch trials, even if they were made up. They are being and having been used relevant for the men and women forcing little kids to ignore from off-campuses influences of on-off campuses collusion /S time that are also simultaneously conscious exploitations of where and how the sciences share an identity, and who and what group or what groups are smart or wise is not going to separate the identity of relativity, showing how the sciences share an identity. For example, per how it is relative to subject treatment with subject treatments like slavery. You don't bring up slavery and leave out those most critically simultaneously hyper-recorded things and finite details forced not spoke about. That's part of the slavery. No one could deny if you allowed honesty and allowed mandated law followed at locations. That and how even the suburbs, since before our founders were born, before cars were even around, before let alone trucks, cranes, the suburbs have been tactically denatured. This had already been sustained against the colonists, against the Native Americans, everyone against each other, Native Americans against Native Americans. They took them from their education. That is what is most practical and probable to convey and to discern. Everyone was forced to entertain criminally foreign influenced identities of sciences individually grouped together, increasingly self-valuing needs, means, and nature, pretending not to realize. Employed since before other physical employments, needing to blame other things, others, or selves for what nature keeps increasingly demonstrating is really the fault of the breaching method, and where and how it holds us as fact-cheap in nature, needing to respond to the real cause of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. Finite, grouped, and together, how per its system, how it uses us as this volume, as the species body of volume, of as an individual, where we are individuals, how we are grouped, areas, ages, sexes, etc. That is in demonstration of the same thing. /S, for example, the hyper invisible but still discernible, being distinct from the invisible but still discernible. For example, that which the value of a subject is, and that which the value of a predicate is. Note, we are dealing with the identity of a main verb when we're dealing with the identity of a predicate. Note how predicate of a predicate act, someone who commits a predicate act, is a criminal insidiousness nature. But note how the predicate act's roles were employed by the breaching method that employed colonization's members individually grouped and together, to collusions with that breaching method that had already been against them. So when you hear the summaries of history and the usages of names and of motivations left out, don't leave out what is left out, which is the criminally foreign influence database relationships. Science's uses and non-uses of the real means it needs, the real means to cause positive value nature progressions, acts, and natures. Obviously, most probable and demonstrable is that and how the ancients had access to seeds and to qualities of soil that had been tactically denatured. So we wouldn't, part of locking people not even remembering that. Part of locking people reliant upon criminal insidious natures of means to cause positive value nature progressions in collusion with NAS. That even worse, with NAS differentially, that causing negative value nature progressions. For example, everyone forced to blame other things, others, ourselves, for slavery. Our founders said that they could tell no lies through a story that was told to us about George Washington by people that were lying, though, in collusion with it, because they left out the database relationship. They left out how that breaching method had already employed everyone at all locations through all kind of other motivations, natures, needs, interests, how they were employed as standing sense and sensibilities, use Jane Austen's phrase, reportedly her phrase. Now, I'm pretty sure that's true. In other words, but so this is an identity of we are the identity of the ground, but hyper additionally, we are hyper addition of it, and where how that's not true, it's hyper additionally ourselves. And this is the value of that, which we stay complete as, and only automatically temporary positive because of its identity of conjunction to itself. An extent of complete possession over all parts of space / existence became and or was. And its identity of relationship to itself as all parts of space / existence, as the identity of them, it became increasingly valuable. It figured out how to make more and more of its extent of itself as the extent of complete possession of all parts of space / existence, only increasing. All exceptions and exception nature that appear to be in demonstration of other are in demonstration of the same thing. And per and how it answers questions, and already answered relevant questions. And this also being relevant to that quality of fact-keeping nature, being forced by political parties and being forced by their exceptions as criminal and serious natures of exceptions and of exception nature. So one identity of hyper simultaneous is its one identity of relationship to itself and no increasing value of that. Exceptions that are temporarily appearing to be in demonstration of other are how it is 5 distinct identities of sequence nature. Now, this is also relevant because there are names involved with the Ninth Circuit Court in Manhattan and in New York who were it was proven out right before the World Trade Center attack the Ninth Circuit Court next to the World Trade Center towers. There were names involved with planting illusions on like and sequence shifts, intercities and interstates, and worse than just with other countries, individually and grouped, even countries that have nothing to do with each other, relative to where and to how remotely used was and is our identities at campuses of each age and nature, their identities, their voicings, their defenses of it. There are simultaneously positive treatments and negative treatments simultaneously. There are identity treatments. Computers have to mimic this. They have to use databases and physical locations, programming relative to it with loops, with the sensory hyper additional things that could be added to the systems as the identity of a computer that works with the identities of the languages that work with its own, that works with the identities of its users. For example, there is one way to bring a puzzle together. There are multiple ways it could come together. Then it could be an online version of it. It can be increasing ways it could come together. But there is only one way it could come together. As its identity, complete. As its identity of relationship to itself, complete. And the value of that. There is only one answer. See, we are being prevented offensively from using exceptions and exception nature with our fact-sheeping nature. Offensively by complete strangers and ones we only know because they were influenced since they were kids. At each age of fact-sheeping nature, rather. Timed. There's illusions where how nature is demonstrating, all having had roles, sickly distinctly, but all. Otherwise, they attach it to fake words, fake locations, fake ties to others, fake natures of ties to others. When people have pretend passions and emotions at locations, for example, yell things out. Yelling things out is one of the things that FBI agents I caught with crimes with Wethersfield Police and other police departments, and all private tied to them, including on off the state prison offices, intercities through time, also with the names next to schools. They have people employed, victim predator reactions, sickly distinctly from how hyper victim predator reactions, and then that defended. For example, as someone asked to speak about these critical things with American history, after only having heard criminal insidious natures of positive treatments and negative treatments as identity treatments. Wherever you have a positive treatment or a negative treatment, you have an identity treatment. You have an identity of the grounds, identity of relationship to itself treatment. This is how and why the maths work, but to explain it properly. For example, one has to be able to explain language properly. To explain any science properly, one has to be able to explain criminal insidiousness, natures of positive treatments and negative treatments. Because one has to be able to explain how everyone got away with blaming other things, others, or ourselves. That which everyone knows, simultaneously, sickly, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. The sciences are abridged. They are not that hyper-native system we are as the one that is demonstrating to us why we have black pupils and whites of eyes. It answers our questions. why we are individual grouped species body of volume /S. Exception, everything's in demonstration. With the identity. Okay, so my name is Anthony Wall. You can call me Romulus. We must be Romulus. We must value that which is not the Republic, because every identity, where it is really completely itself, it is reliant upon what it can't be unless it stays itself as itself, the identity of the hyper-simultaneous. So it is a distinct identity of simultaneous nature, which is relevant. Honest science reveals nature needs us to discern how being an individual is a sequence / simultaneous nature that is simultaneously valued with distinctly, non-distinctly, simultaneously with how being a species and how actually grouped, because it's showing us itself, the hyper, how it is distinctly, non-distinctly, and hyper simultaneous itself. It is showing us how to cause positive or negative value nature progressions by using, understanding, and cultivating Earth's special difference, which is relevant to where and how it will only stay positive onto all parts of space / existence as its own body. And we are a concentrated value where Earth and consciousness can be demonstrated to, or can see, when we have no criminal foreign influence, especially legalized, especially differentially, because the areas of overt criminal enterprises, everywhere the species body is, the private ones, especially differentially, the private ones, since before founding natures, and justification of uses of them, and insidiousness of people A through Z, like pretending they care about democracy as one of the ways they get away, and got away with these identity treatments that pretend that people are attacking the identities of the police and or endangering them for pointing out their roles with plainclothes police in their homes. They brought this up, and with the other nations, though. See, the people know this to an extent. Even our directors and the underlings, distinctly, they have, in other words, they knew that they were used criminally for them. They didn't speak for organized crime correctly relative to where and how they've been blaming other things, others, ourselves, for where and how what is actually recorded, what happens when we try to show what people really think about New York City, for example. You can't leave out how the suburbs are tactically denatured. The people who try to do other are comparing, not to help the people, but if you're not admitting how the ground's tactically denatured, or if you're trying to admit it and pretend you're honest and you're leaving out how it's tactically denatured there, you're not caring about where and how it's most sickly, distinctly, tactically denatured. You want to force, trick, hurt people to a fake side employed by a breaching method since before the other employments. Partially and effectively, to have people not be able to use words like employment without people playing stupid, pretend we're talking about, people pretend not to realize that our founders didn't want to entertain natures of industry that were criminally foreign influenced. They had no choice. They still had to hide their roles, setting us to the potential to be able to discern how they were called like this to us, communicating. They did not have free speech. They had to pretend other. in social context, informal context, and in private. All exception, nature, and demonstration of the same thing. Nature, for our mind and how we work, it uses words like exceptions and exception nature. It uses a quality of fact, cheap nature. Offensively, we have prevented for the employments of experts on things, because they knew we would have to make subject statements. Also, some people have lies, some people have delusions, so we have to have experts on that. Those experts have been fabricating audio and video to hide how they're not really experts. They've been self-valuing how the youngest kids and how the college kids and how the other natures of campuses like where they're actively doctors and nurses. These locations, they're lawyers too, planting lawyers that have with the hospital have nothing to do with them individually. They keep everyone legally, fearing and not being honest about their fear, and or two, simultaneously not being honest about how they have no fear. The hospitals have been used as part of the private use with the interbranch, where they are manifest with predicate acts methods, individually grouped and together, where and how them pretending others used remotely, where and how since everyone was a kid, there's a method singular that has been fitting roles with instances coupled with where they're putting fake things in databases. And this is at locations where they have our names measured, they know where we're going to be. So they lock people's sense and sensibilities, positive and negative treatments. Uses of that manifest at other locations that no one's watching, except for the breaching method, which even the people that are watching, because they have other means and needs into insights. A whole bunch of little fake magicians speak for modern nations, as modern nation states, campuses. So the police forms and their family members, and the courts and their family members, in the areas of overt criminal enterprises, and all private tied to them, had my name used with them in backgrounds before. And this is relevant because they attach me and others to fake words with ourselves and others since we were kids. They have remote uses of identities of the ground location, like identities of unions. People associated with unions are also recorded involved as part of their layering of sense and sensibilities. Roles with predicate acts affected increasingly effectively unchallenged, and hold methods of predicate acts at campuses of each age and nature and off them. So this is one of the ways they keep the identities at all locations, reliant upon people like and names, identities like the FBI, identities that are as law but not really law. Or the police, we're the law, we speak for the law. They speak as a quality of fact, cheap nature, a bridge. There's a certain type of victim that won't let anyone defend the lead up to it, because it has every science. This has every science. When you bring up something like slavery, especially as critical as slavery, the identity the sciences share demonstrates itself. Slavery is entertained. Okay, the social sciences, they're sick. Now, you're calling the social scientists, let's pull them over. I go, that person is calling the social scientists quick. All they do is force the quality of fact, cheap nature. Uses of the fake sick sides, delusions raw. And then as the volume that wanted to have this told through. So you have to follow mandated law at locations. They have been lying to the judges, like Judge Napolitano. The reason they've been getting away with it is per uses of people between campuses of each age and nature, that they've been connecting to collusions off campuses as collusions with the on campuses federal crimes with databases, federal crimes roles and methods roles, with uses of how the sciences are abridged and self-valued while they're simultaneously conscious that the Constitution is abridged, and they have roles with it. See, they came to their jobs the same way the overt criminal enterprises and private ones came to positive, negative, and identity treatments and identity ground treatments differentially, especially critically. So where and how sciences were manifest roles with that legalized, enforced, legal and criminal specifically to exploit at locations and to maintain propagated positive and negative treatments, identity treatments simultaneously that couldn't defend themselves, and simultaneously afford proper defenses and syntactical responses of any person, even with the shortest words, proper against that predicate act, that predicate acts delivery system method, that criminal insidiousness delivery system method. That is the value of those laws that were standing. Everything, witch trials and slavery, you don't leave that out how they were simultaneous, and you don't leave out how they are being and haven't been employed. Subject treatments, effectively used to measure and maintain by a breaching method. Science's experts, criminally foreign influence delusions raw, individually grouped and together, increasingly needing to self-value, means to get away with pretending and being identities of sophistication, exploiting, where and how they have the sciences obfuscated and at the younger ages and at the other ages and natures of campuses sickly distinctly, effectively to keep from being discerned how sickly non-distinctly. And where that is true, there are styles of syntactically manifest, increasingly self-valuing, how blamed on other things, others, ourselves, what the breaching method causes and measure, maintain, even when correctly. So laws regarding slavery were correctly blamed, but how the laws came through other natures and needs, interests, and identities in collusion, even though too themselves enslaved, but they're also as roles with it. If you're running a slave plantation, I don't care how much money you get, you're a slave. See, you guys want to leave out exception nature. You want to leave out how the breaching method employed things by playing stupid with fellow employment. That could only mean this. You see how the definitions of the words have more than one definition. In other words, there's a quality of fact-cheating nature that stays criminal insidiousness nature. And because they prevent mandated law with short words and sentences, and while stacking more names, the judicial branch and the executive branch, they have crime methods where they stack their own names and other people's names and needs to use them specifically to then sequence shift and get away with uses of the right to lie. They're lying about their own motivations. They're lying about what they perceive the motivations of others to be. And they're valuing every means to get away with it. Like using even their own kids. Because that's how sick they are. They need to pretend. That's their emotions. That was their motivations for making up things about strangers. In other words, pretending passions and emotions where they are criminally insidious natures being exploited, where they have been pretending passions and emotions. And that's only capable of being Then, so in other words, Connecticut has 6 schools, and they self-value how the schools of the rest in the other states are sickly, distinctly worse. Some ways they're better. Per the breaching method, employed those fake differences, those contrasts, self-value. It measures and maintains. Everyone blaming other things, exploiting, having been blamed on other things, others themselves. What it caused, what it causes. Oh, it's politics, each side says to themselves and to others. In other words, they never were taught to speak for positive properly. They never were taught to speak about negative properly. They never were taught to speak about identity properly. So honesty reveals that we need to discern that a distinct identity of simultaneous that comes with the discernment of how being an individual, how being grouped, and how being a species body of volume is simultaneously plural volumes, individual grouped together. Because it's part of the hyper invisible, but still discernible in demonstration to us. English is not just the individual, invisible, but still discernible, being communicated with words, with our sentences, like subjects and predicates treatments. See, we have failed with predicate acts treatments too, simultaneously, this trinity. The sciences sharing the identity. So a predicate act is in demonstration of an identity that has an identity of a relationship to itself. That is increasingly valued as criminal insidiousness. Prepare! The sciences, they bear upon campus with stolen land. See, the Republic relies upon the campuses. It relies upon what doesn't want to for right reasons. It can't be. Because in other words, we can't be the identity of evolution unless we stay increasingly valuing and led by how and why. But led by how. It has means to lead us, to show what's really going to cause positive value, nature, progression, the action needs. What really are our means. One way redeems. Forget about how, in other words, when they blame things on money and stuff like that, the breaching method. Well, how much would it cost to fix New York? They don't even talk about, there is space across the globe. Ground Earth is tactically denatured. I don't even know, there are hardly any at all worms. They used to be able to dig in anywhere. Go in there and find a worm, put the grass back, keep growing. Worms used to walk into the puddles. They used to walk into the bodies of water. What causes evolution's fruits and gifts and means out of nowhere is the system that we are offensively prevented free speech to attend, to be. And by those pretending others, scream. So people want me and want everyone to be able to use passions and emotions honestly. When we do this, these are people in the background. They've been already attaching us to fake passions and emotions uses, fake conversations with themselves. That's one of the things they do hyper additionally with that. They're preventing us short words from telling on them when we catch them. The police forms involved with the Wethersfield Police Chief Cintron, Intercities, and with police forms from my street and from my area. Then they pretend it's personal. They brought this up. They brought this up since they were kids planting evidences because they were victims. hyper victims used remotely. They have little kids and they have the adults putting fake things into kids' databases. Further, with a principal upskirt nature, there are more FBI associated with people with the name Ian, and with intercities locations, like in Middletown, has a whole bunch of people involved with all kinds of medical locations and their extended family members, all kinds of uses of drugs, crimes with evidences, roles with the names with that on off body dumping spots, including where and how they don't even want to have anything to do with murderers, but they self-value roles with such. We can also see grouped in all together how everyone's self-valuing the real causes of all the murders in Hartford, the shootings in Hartford, blamed on other things other than themselves, especially too differentially where even when they're blaming it on the right things and on the right people, they're doing it as collusions and uses of all that really went down and really goes down. And as roles, some ways worse than the killers themselves. In fact, increasingly, ulterior ways were more criminally involved than the same criminals they're putting in jails and innocent people. And by making charges that they know are fake, to hide lipoaggressions, to orchestrate means to get away with hiding lipoaggressions at locations more and more. Per their actions, their roles will uses criminally foreign influence of locations next to the news media and on the news media locations. Then they pretend we're saying bad things about them. I'm only talking about what's actually recorded. They've been adding hyper additional fake things. They demonstrated, confessed, were confirmed, record. They know to an extent. They've been getting away with it because they've been hiding their sense and sensibilities, roles with racketeering and other natures of worse than war crimes on off campuses, which is what this is about, worse than war crimes. The slavery of everyone sickly distinctly, slavery of our founding parents sickly distinctly, and the slavery of people that hurt the most sickly distinctly. Sickly distinctly, some of the Native Americans, some of the colonists. These are groups syntactically manifest that were propagated effectively for the function /S, for the programming, as that which is actually manifest, as criminal insidious natures of positive treatments, negative treatments, and identity treatments still only allowed her. Or they attach you to fake words, fake locations, fake ties to other people, fake natures of ties to other people, while pretending passions, emotions, and they attach everyone and the people around them to it, therefore, in other ways too, observably. And that is exploited increasingly at all locations. So they do this with the military too. They have military police families that are involved with other countries' military on off Trinity College and CCSU. Also on off as people involved on off Old Weathersfield locations next to the witch trial place, which is right next to where George Washington had to come to counter extort the people involved with that breaching method to help right before the last battle of the Revolutionary War. Had to counter extort them, force them to semi collusions against that which was had made it illegal to speak for nature honestly, and had made it criminal to it had made it criminal to speak for nature honestly, and it had simultaneously had made it criminal to not speak for nature dishonestly. And that increasingly is effectively used remotely, roles with that, as that, and pretending others, so screening it. They're criminally preventing Donald Trump for being the quality of fact-cheating nature he wants to be. They criminally they prevented both him and President Obama, sickly distinctly, from being in the quality of fact-cheating nature they needed to be. And so they needed to make short words other. They needed to entertain the quote sense and sensibilities of locations, areas, and states. Criminal and serious natures of positive, negative, and identity treatments. Police. They never had an identity of integrity. They never had the identity of integrity to speak for Marbury versus Madison, let alone themselves. Here! This is how you use passions, emotions. You keep it real always. You don't leave out the smallest, some finite detail. You don't value means to get away with doing that, which we have to address. Where and how they have the kids of the interbranch and the overt criminal enterprises and private ones kept with the adults and elderly of their family need to pretend passions, emotions, motivations by keeping their rat trap. See, they have criminally foreign influence uses of readings of statutes at locations in their own, where they recorded themselves consciously, where statutes give them the benefit of the doubt. They're not supposed to be planting things at a location so they can use the readings of statutes that way. When you catch them lying, for example, they pretend they used to have the right to say like that. They're left out. They have roles with predicate acts against every age of fact-cheating nature, and with screening that. So that requires demonstrating how they pretend they had integrity. That requires demonstrating them self-valuing the people who attacked the Capitol, because they need blamed on other things, others are self. They need obfuscated. All the demonstrations, the little sick fake punks are only allowed to speak for them for their identity because they're in the way with those trick games, pretending people are saying things bad about the police. The police are fake punks. I didn't say anything bad about the police. I said relative to that, they're fake. There are no identity. They have no identity to speak for or to defend. Attend. Get them from the switching names into branch. On paper now. Get them from the Patachimita fake behavior, too. As their roles with the fake conversations, that's one of the things they're doing. They're lying about people's behavior. They have that word. They have all words and phrases already recorded themselves as a rat trap that is a part of understanding American history. With our witch trials and slavery and Jim Crow laws simultaneously. We use also simultaneously what they were applied for, where they were blamed on other things other than themselves, where it was and is, where it is being blamed on other things other than themselves, and how those are names. Roles, areas, groups, increasingly self-valuing it and having been blamed on other things other than themselves. So, integrity never spoke for as each branch of government, and that's the same thing in every modern country, at all locations. Here, gather round. So these are people involved with the World Trade Center from Connecticut. These are people that demonstrate, confess, record, which actually recorded. They'll have to admit it. Through strangers, they time it at things so there's no proper response. Fact-cheating nature oriented. And when you make proper responses for the way they force the subject treatments, they'll punish you for that too. So this is shaping where and how little kids lie at certain ages. Because they've been doing this at each age of fact-cheating nature sickly, distinctly. They want to speak for the education anyway. Get out. Every science, they're sick. They are sick. Now that's evidence. And how they do this, they get away with it. They call people names because because they lie about the passions, emotions at locations with wire crime roles and methods, with the interbranch location, where how they're being haven't been used remotely in cases, at their houses, in their communications, as their sense and sensibilities. This method was sophistication since before they were born here. They know they have no sophistication, and they value all exception nature being and having been used to get away with pretending other. So have them attend to what really caused slavery and what really are our means relative to what really causes the negative value nature progressions, action natures in New York City. What really used it and does attend. They don't care. They don't care about the police. The news media fabricates information into the media. Make sure they get a response from someone because they have wire crime methods already recorded. They're pretending others recorded. That's also evidence. That's why we have to get them onto paper and from the names forging and switching. These are people from Connecticut, interbranch, all personal ties to them, their families, intimate ties to themselves. I caught at locations before the World Trade Center attack. Also on off the campuses with evidences crimes, identity natures of crimes. Fear. I'll teach you here. You know, it's all right. You want to call me a name, whatever, like that. Don't call someone trying to report child abuses names, especially with the little rap mobs in the background, fakes further. Now too, me and other people, we want to only care about the people that we care extra about the people that we went to schools with. Second, you know that. Now these people try to make exceptions, even people that we like. In other words, there are two girls with the name Christine. I don't know which one they were talking about. And for example, there's a Bob Chase involved with confessions tied to a Phil Cololo. Bob Chase is involved with child sex offenders and various natures of courts and people with various intercity locations where they formerly worked and or work, like in Middletown, has roles also with other informal locations in Middletown, has roles with criminally foreign influenced uses of investigators who then go back and pretend their integrity anyway. See, we have to deal with how the FBI was recorded with the state police and the Wethersfield police and other police forms like military police families, switching names, sequence shifting, and how all this has ties back to people who went to my grammar school that had nothing to do with, that were in the background with a Debbie Gold and her family pretending passions and emotions, and with people with an O'Brien family pretending passions and emotions from other classrooms in people's conversations, making statements when people come around corners, timed. I figured out uses of it because they brought it up. The breaching method brought it up. In other words, the breaching method is inseparable from when we have these predicate acts against ourselves that are fact, treatment, nature oriented. That's also evidence where and how we had these fact, treatment, nature oriented method. So this method /S so overtly / insidiously simultaneously upon us so long, and no one ever addressed the fact, treatment, nature oriented predicate acts, or the demonstrations that the people that pretending to speak for the law are speaking for a criminally foreign influence. That's because they employed black / white / counters to that, both fake sides, all one fake side together, blaming other things, others, ourselves, and defending that as styles of logic, as styles syntactically manifest, can't defend themselves unless they do the time. So we're still playing this game. You can't say things bad about the police and support them at the same time. They're preventing how exception nature are used by nature to demonstrate to us, because they've been putting fake exceptions where they help pretend people to lie. They fake exceptions pertaining to know me with a Gold family. Now I barely know a Joe Aiello. Has something to do with their roles with the parks in Hartford and Wethersfield, where they have various natures of federal crimes with the kids, also through the people that run those programs with the kids. I don't know all their names, but I know how to get them. And they have ties to a Dillon family through time. Whole bunch of names tied to a Jeremy Grohl and people that live next to the state, next to the community center, involved through time with federal crimes with doctors and judges and prosecutors and other countries, people involved with it, and people tied to them involved with other countries, involved with criminally foreign influence uses of databases behind people's backs, people that never even had classes together. And people I barely know that made fake exceptions. I made a fake exception too. I mean, after I made it, where they try to play games where they have qualities of fact sheet, time treatment, where they're pretending people are liars, and they set those exceptions up so they can pretend they're not an exception. In other words, this is where they use the rights, the truths for lies, because they are criminally foreign influence needing to. They have criminally foreign influence natures needing to differentially too. So this requires a quality of fact treatment nature to counter the real causes of criminal insidiousness natures of positive and negative treatments, identity treatments at all identity to ground locations. And we need to do this fast, because I should just be saying that and moving on and showing how the scientists share this identity. What really binds the maths. Hey, pass. So in other words, I'll show you how to discern physical delusions and the lies of experts who have been using their, quote, knowledge of good and evil, unquote, to get over on each age and nature of fact treatment nature in life. Begin. So we just need someone to follow mandated law. I caught more with the intercampuses was involved. It is involved. Where everyone speaks to each other and pretends they're honest. In other words, you guys brought the sequence shift too. So we have to deal with the sequence shifts, which are simultaneously roles with way worse, where the fake things are being stacked into the databases, remote uses of the outcomes and cases, and with instances between the policing and ourselves. See, between the experts of each of the sciences are the complete remote possession of a breaching method, a predicate acts delivery system method, a criminal insidiousness delivery system method. So to understand this, we have to understand how criminal insidiousness is an identity, the ground's identity of relationship to itself, the hyper simultaneous, that is only increasingly negative by nature, where and how it will only stay positive onto all parts of itself. And increasingly positive, that could make more positive, that is also positive identity of relationship to itself. Or that a special difference of earth is forced from here, where we are more forever nature being made. Hear many pray, vaccines. In each prayer, distinct also had non-distinctly. This to counter full vaccines. I teach us things. Ye species train. So give me a name. So one of the ways they get away with this, one of the things they do is pretend not to understand people, pretend that they try to make people mad, strangers online. One of the ways they got away with this is because they have police forms involved with it. Now they have the families that answer the phones for the police through time and associated with them, involved with various natures of crimes with drugs and of sexual natures, involved while they are simultaneously natures of identity theft, fraud, slanders, time through time, and uses of them. There were also people that had communications with English teachers of mine, is one of the patterns of the people that are involved with doing that with child sex offenders. There was a Dr. Zeman who's recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with a Judge Killian with crimes with their patients and criminals, with drugs crimes in my area, with kids, roles with untimely deaths. One of them was on the college of Trinity College. Even if made up, those people were involved with predicate acts on my street, timed in Wethersfield, as people that had also timed roles with planting illusions on off Trinity College and CCSU. And I figured out how it was related to them. They were doing that in the past too, and relevant confessions and demonstrations of this, with the same campuses involved and other campuses and names at the spots next to them, recorded how kept needing to hide lie progressions from where and how their uses of other people's names in conversations is being and haven't been used, criminally foreign influence by investigations and investigators, and them with and as some of them too. Their family members. Then they want to pretend they have integrity anyway. They painted themselves in corners. So we have to demonstrate that consciously recorded people confess and demonstrate, confirm roles with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and the interbranch kept at the same time with a whole bunch of other countries. You need to hide the same sequence as fine, active, progressive lies, and from things that are being demonstrated by nature towards names at campuses of each age and nature, where they are shown simultaneously, preemptively, need to hide things to come. They're actually recorded natures, for example, and actively they are needed to and to come. I mean, from things in the past, from things. So they brought up in the past their names, the people they speak through, the courts and the police forms brought up things and names and fake conversations with me. That brought their names and more names up. When a person goes to court because the cops are knaves and they say, well, let the courts decide it. They have criminally foreign influence readings of statutes as collusion. Again, as we have to deal with how as victim predators / hyper victim predators, because it's differentially that. It's where they don't want to be that, but they already were, and are increasingly that, because it's increasingly used remotely, effectively. So the DMV and the Department of Motor Vehicles, a whole bunch of people tied to a Tom Perone and to a Danielle Perone and to their extended family members and the neighbors around them, involved with mayors and with Wethersfield town offices, involved with judges and prosecutors, former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, his lawyer, Robert Chevrolet, involved with a whole bunch of, police forms. And there's also a Trantola recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, all along Route 3 and on and off the state judicial branch offices, involved with police forms and people with other country criminally foreign influence, planting evidences, changing what people say, pretending people make conspiracy theories, for example, afterwards and preemptively with WFSB, Fox Connecticut News. They also have confirmed Sandro Spada and Antonetta Spada were involved with some medical families and doctors that were involved with drugs and medicines crimes with the campuses and with some judges and courts and their family members criminally involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, planting evidences, and timed uses of corners of buildings and planting exceptions so they can pretend people are lying when they say they don't know others that they don't know at all, juxtaposed with the ones they don't know at all, but they try to make film exceptions, make people perceive the perceptions. See, where the interbranch and the foreign have been, this breaching method knew that they would be kept. They needed to hide uses of their identities as they are actually manifest, had complete remote possession of that. So there are houses. There are real estate companies and people associated with the name Dillon and Anna Dillon and Annie Dillon who are involved with interbranch switching names and some child sex offenders that are also involved with some military police families and military families and people involved with the kids further on off Two-Rod Highway. Now it's involved with the sale of a home of a Spada family. That's one of the names that were brought up by one of the Cololos involved with the Bob Chase's confessions and other recorded proofs of his roles with falsified police reports and wire crimes and various natures of other federal crimes with child sex offenders and with other natures of child abusers simultaneously, including online with police involved with it, foreign and domestic. As people on off campuses that never even had classes together who are attaching other people to fake natures of ties to themselves, fake ties. Now, these are also people on the neighbors of the Spadas are also ones recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed by all the people involved with these judges and various natures of courts. and people that have been speaking fake things into records with them. They also pretend to have fake conversations with me, Azeem, about Facebook and with my family and with with families of the kids that they were involved with sexual and medical abuses of. There's also a Dr. Laura Saunders who was recorded timed criminally foreign influence roles with other names next to the campuses, like next to the principal sex offenders. Now these are people next to the child campuses, and like one near Trinity College, one's near Trinity College. Also, as people involved with predicate acts on and off Trinity College, that a whole bunch of co-defendants and their family members and ties to them are involved with. Of former director of the FBI, roles with planting things by having people say things that they can't to strangers, where they make exceptions too. That's also relevant, because this is where and how qualities of fact treatment nature are forced, where increasingly the same outcome /S keeps blamed on other things, others, ourselves, the real cause of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures in our towns and cities each. Sickly distinctly, so we don't, it's increasingly valuable to honesty to be able to discern the breaching method, that and how sickly distinctly negatively not liberated, not free is New York City from the suburbs that are also sickly distinctly, since before our founders were born, before cars even, tactically denatured, forced to be self-valued that way, where no one would discern where that is being used remotely, criminally foreign influence. Fear! Make sure you follow mandated law, someone, for New York City. You guys don't have the courage, get a group and ask Judge Napolitano to respond to mandated law. Get me the name of those three of the judges, any one of them who disagree, because I caught them with various natures of courts with crimes on rolls on my street through time. Same ones I caught intercities, whole bunch of ways, and they started this. And in other words, I want a response for the campus. Did not respond to me yet. They forced everyone to speak through others. This is why and how the WFSB has been attaching little kids to fake locations, ties to others, natures of ties to others. They've been roles with the kids of mayors, with the remote uses of their sense and sensibilities. There's a girl in a Leahy family, and there are others involved that I know of that are further involved with, like, upskirt pictures and uses of them by men and women who are involved with insidiously exploitation of uses of the sciences abridged, time treatments, criminally foreign influence, sickly, speaking about how people are individually grouped together, sickly. Not just because they employed natural differences to mean other than they were. They apply, just like they do with computers. They assign them additional meanings and values. And they knew that would be manifest with our syntax nature at all locations, where and how we are actually manifest. I taught best. So they use wire crime methods with the phones that fabricate, that replace what's actually recorded, and also they made fake conversations with themselves, because they painted themselves in corners when I was growing up. They had themselves painted into corners, where and how they were used criminally foreign influence. It's not hard to discern that and how all locations, areas, and states are criminally foreign influence. We don't even have to be lawyers to discern this. And it's not hard to discern that and how the lawyers, since founding, have been fabricating audio and video with the people involved with, and that is shocking us, speaking about what Jim Crow laws were about. We will not attend. So they have the little fake employments of black, white, manifest into branch, pretending they could speak for black, pretending they could speak for white. This is consciously measuring and maintaining the pseudo sophistication that can't deal with where and how the surface nations that took part with colonization, we're fighting with each other, and we're already used remotely. Already pseudosciences, criminally foreign influence sciences, their identity of relativity to itself. They have theory of relativity as part of the name's sick identity treatments. They have theory, volume theories, sick. Part of that which is preventing hypersimultaneous volume sciences is actually manifest from being demonstrated. So with the proofs, with this theorem of evolution, one proof is where and how mandated law is offensively prevented by those screening it while pretending other and lying about their motivations, even when they're telling them true. In other words, that's why they're using effectively their kids as their motivation. They employed each age and nature of each fact-keeping nature, their sense and sensibility, as roles as predators / hyper predators, speaking for the law anyway. Here! Make sure you get me response. Scenes appear. I try to speak for passions and emotions in America. So far not have yet. Let's not forget. See that CCSU tied campus on Franklin Avenue? Harvard students, Wethersfield students, Rocky Hill students, New Britain students. Let's have a game. Let's see make sure the person gets their parent involved. Don't do this unless you have the permission of your parent. Make sure I get a response. See Renaissance. I caught them on and off your campuses with the sick things. That sick method /S. I caught uses. In other words, let's get me response from the principal child abuser's campus. And let's do it privately if they want privacy. But they don't want privacy. So get on paper if they want privacy. In other words, they've been pretending they want privacy is one of the passions and emotions they've been pretending. One of the motivations they've been pretending to hide their actually recorded motivations. They've been sequence shifting. These are Connecticut courts that have rules with predicate acts and relevant wrongdoing and sequence shifts from inside their courts and from outside. They also coordinated rules further recorded on and off the World Trade Center attack locations in Manhattan, the Ninth Circuit Court right next to it, the hotel next to it, involved a whole bunch of distinct natures of organized crime and names, like a Scalora family is also interstates with DeMauro families involved with intelligence community and people with the World Trade Center who are involved with Koreans and with Russians and with people from Italy and with people from, UPS, involved also with Ukraine, criminally foreign influence, people on and off the state judicial branch offices, on and off houses near there, like with the old Green and old Wethersfield, are people involved with military families, military families who've been used for evidence as crimes. With the investigators haven't been used remotely, lying about the motivations of other people, lying about how we feel about them. In other words, these are people that try to make you say bad things about them because they don't want you to have anyone to have. They don't want credibility's voice to speak. Credibility never spoke. You had a bunch of sick, fake punks that are a certain type of child abuse victim that now as adults pretending not. Because that's all that was heard. So make sure you get a response for the three branches of government that prevented me writing since I was a kid. There's connections between this. I wanted to speak using physics, metaphysics, and identity relative to, the fact treatments where, other things, others ourselves is blamed for what caused things and used things like slavery, and where and how there are means to show people lying to themselves and to others and with physical delusions when they make opinions about things like slavery, and where and how there is an increasing value by why and how nature is demonstrating to us, understand simultaneously how distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously, and hyper simultaneously too, where and how and why we have black pupils, whites of eyes. where and how things like color, all differences have been assigned additional values that had nothing to do with that while they were measuring and maintaining. Obviously, simultaneously, it has things to do with everything. They forced that, though. They were simultaneously measuring, maintaining what it caused, which in new nature would demonstrate negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. There are still people blaming those and self-valuing those blamed on other things other than themselves. There was a rat trap game from off campuses, between campuses of all ages and natures on the areas, all sickly distinctly. As the names involved with the suburbs recorded criminally involved with the shootings problems in Hartford, as the people with Wethersfield. See, you see a bunch of victim predator fake punk reactions where they speak for how this is they look at statistics, that how this is a quiet area. We don't have these things go on. These are the names involved, through others. Everyone's using everyone's names remotely. Make sure you get a response from me for the campus that was recorded, confessed, demonstrated by the news media, whole bunch of people. There's also corner houses on corners of the street, like Highland Street. I think we're not, what is it? Ridge Road. No, not all the streets have criminally foreign uses of. So I don't know Paul Kelly. He made exceptions to pretend other with a Violet family involved with investigations and investigators from Trinity College and from UConn through time that have been involved criminally with Wethersfield campuses, Hartford campuses, including medical campuses. So a whole bunch of people at Hartford Hospital involved with drugs and sexual crimes and identity thefts and frauds and sequence shifts with a Mark Violet and people associated with Crystal Lane or something in Wethersfield and in Rocky Hill too, and people relative to those names, also through time. There's a Mike Roberts, also who is one of the ones recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with wire crimes and identity thefts and frauds behind my back with people that pretended to know me and mixed with people who made fake exceptions so they could lock people criminally foreign influence needing to pretend other. In other words, she walked up to me one time and called me Stony. She's planting evidences, roles, per what was actually communicated to me. And that was a sequence shift role. That was after my grade graduated. In other words, there are proofs that they pretended I never saw Ray Claw and Joe DeMauro at the community center. One time, real quick for a second, and it was after they graduated. So that was also made to look like or no, it was in other words, there was something to do with the community centers, the people's names that are involved with drugs, crimes, and with uses of Millwoods Park. They recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. I had nothing to do with Millwoods Park and them there. They tried to make a quick exception 2 times. One time with a Claw and a DeMauro, and another time with a DeMauro. I had nothing to know. These were people who make confessions and demonstration about their roles with areas overt criminal enterprises, plural, and private ones, and uses of them and of their family members' roles with that, and with confessions about people from my grammar school, about them, from them, and them about them, even when they don't use their names. These are strangers that sought me out. They have connections between themselves. So there's something to do with the FBI and the witness protection program with a Joshua Stryker, who has been with overt criminal enterprises and people with shipping locations involved with uses of my name tied to the people at the corners of streets, like on Griswold Street, by the investigators and news people that have been involved with identity theft frauds acts, planting evidences at locations online because they have criminally foreign influence readings of statues. For example, that Peruta family is recorded consciously involved with. I don't even know them. They try to make a fake exception. I didn't respond to it. He doesn't know me. It has something to do with the police chief Centron from Wethersfield through time involved with people criminally at the corner of Elm Street and Route 3, and other corners of buildings and streets involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, evidence crimes, federal rules of evidence crimes, abuses of kids crimes rolls with them. They have plainclothes police forms, like females and males, sickly distinctly, having been involved with the judges and the prosecutors, with the spots next to the campuses. So there's a Gill family with some Latin themed families, and with some black families, and with some white power families who are involved with those little groupings of people with the Justice Department, with the prisons, on off the state prison offices. They've been planting evidences, identity theft, fraud, slandering people. They have roles of wire crimes, acts, and methods, as the names I caught further involved with, as roles with child abuses, with child abuser leaders of the kids, and know how they have the interbranch kids around them. Hey! Make sure you get them on paper. Don't have them pretend any more passions and emotions. Make sure I get a name to respond to. On paper now! They failed to give me a paper. They made confessions about putting fake police reports rolls into databases. That's what they actually confirmed. They even switched the arresting officers' names to ones that weren't even there. You're putting fake things differentially into the database so they can adapt after, because of how the FBI and other police forms are involved criminally. There's also a guy with the name Hunter involved with Amy or Emily, who works associated with the people at the judges and prosecutors and people involved with Hartford courts, with the courts criminally involved at other locations, that where her boyfriend asked me involved with military police families from Wethersfield, in ways he doesn't know, but to an extent, and from Rocky Hill. That's in the Britain and West Hartford. These are people with the intelligence community planting fabricated audio and video. Now, there are also roles with a Dean Judd's kid, family member. They forced, tricked, her persuaded to plant evidence as roles, identity theft, fraud, slanders, where and how not just investigators and crime scenes are used remotely. All that training, that all those campuses roles with that. They're only capable of this since what I caught them doing with the child campuses. A whole bunch of people with the intelligence community associated with Central Connecticut State University went out of their way to take collusion with names all along the road en route to there, involved with identity thefts and frauds, then timed uses of them on off all spots of all sides of it. I figured out what it's about too. It's how they're using neighbors too of everyone, fake but pretending other, as victim predators, where how people are afraid to counter things they don't understand, like the FBI director's roles as a defendant with the police forms criminally foreign influence at the locations, criminally foreign influence grouped too, crime methods pretending other and hiding it as individuals, the executive branch, and as the judicial branch, distinct crime methods. But then further grouped, they have crime methods too. Because they were grouped and they're individuals and they're all together bound by the breaching method, tactical ulterior from how nature is. And the breaching method was sophistication here first. So they pretend that we're insulting them when we say they don't have sophistication, both parties, because they want to make it personal, because they need it fake. CT must break. Vaccines. Let's get the courts onto one name and sequence. So when Eric Burgess and Emily or Amy involved with switching names courts of New Britain Superior Court and Hartford courts use them to influence deans and students on off different campuses involved with untimely deaths. And then they pretend you're criticizing people for using drugs or whatever like that. They brought it up. They used the drugs to influence the people to make things up about strangers and hide things and pretend others simultaneously. That's just one of the nature. They brought up sexual crimes because they keep the types of crimes self-value used, how their roles with uses of them juxtaposed. Because they have criminally foreign influence uses of the types of identity ground locations experts. Department of Children and Families also has investigators, women and men. There are women and men judges, forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded to roles with child sex offenders still. So you need to get on paper, mandated laws required. This even has recorded uses of campuses I've never even been on. I could discern it because I know the predicate acts and methods and uses of them, of the names involved. Also with as timed uses of them at locations next to the campuses. This is also brought up with the syntax of the news media that attached me and everyone around me. And little kids, they attach to fake, and their families fake conversations about legal cases. Because these are names that the investigators all had personal ties with various natures of federal criminals and their family members with even further methods and natures of federal crimes and child abuses. Elderly abuse at the same time. They have uses of the people that work at elderly homes with those programs at the same time. All fake speaking for the law and how through lawyers fabricating audio and video. They're using, make sure you respond for Trantolo and Trantolo because he's involved with some prosecutors and judges where they make charges against people like harassment if you call them back. In other words, one guy called me a whole bunch of times and made different confessions and then he would make more confessions. The principal child offender involved criminally with the Trantolo and Trantolo, and they know, but only to an extent, that they can't be honest about. They just know they can't be honest. They just know that they have to cover up what's actually recorded. They've been planting evidence. These are also people with the Bose family involved with. I never had anything to do with the Bose family. They're also one of the ones by people on my street recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed involved with identity thefts and frauds behind my back and at locations, out of their locations. I never had anything to do with them. Now these are police forms involved with like motorcycle gangs and stuff, and with like white power themed and black themed military police involved with switching names, forging names, identity thefts, frauds, criminally foreign influence uses of little fake conversations between boys and girls, slanders from kids that I never had anything to do with from other campuses that were brought up by confessions of people when I was in grammar school, when I was coming around corners too. I remember these things. And see, I'm also aware, better than the experts, of how people forget things because they're relative to these sick, positive, and negative treatments and uses of them. This is not just blind ignorance that blamed on other things, others ourselves, and is still blaming on other things themselves. The real cause of negative value progression. The real cause of how someone could get away with pretending they don't discern that, and how a breaching method worse than war crimes set up the real causes of shootings in New York City and of Hartford now. From back then. Vaccines. Don't be cowards. Don't keep making complaints about things with the dirty cops on Facebook, on the Reddit. The Reddit child abuses page. They're involved with a whole bunch of, sickly distinctly from Facebook, fabricating audio and video with child offenders, even sexual, medical, and judicial, and their family members' roles with it. You sick, fake punks. Tell yourself if you're too scared to get me a name, whoever you are watching this, don't pretend you don't know what the fuck I said. Excuse my language. I told you to get me a fucking name on paper now, motherfucker. Make sure you fucking speak for me fucking now. Now! Give me a fucking name. Because make sure, too, you understand that they put me in fake yelling when I didn't, and fake calm behavior, fake conversations. But that's part of it. They're playing games with passions and emotions since the kids are little. You sick, fake punk motherfuckers. That's what the fuck has been speaking for New York City. Oh, clear motherfucker. These are fake conversations about World Trade Center, also the news media of Connecticut pretending. You fake motherfuckers. Fear God, I have to keep fucking mentioning and fucking begging for you to fix your fake motherfucking news. So use the phrase of the president. You sick, fake punk motherfuckers. Locations, areas, and states forcing leaders to stay entertaining you sick, fake punk motherfucking tools and weapons and screening tools against what's hurting those fucking kids. You don't want fucking smoke for fucking women. Get the fuck down! They have little fake experts of men and women. You fucking motherfuckers. Get the fuck on paper. Here!